Okay, let's dive deep into one of the most, well, fascinating and complex places on Earth, the Indian state of Kerala.
It really is something else.
Our mission today really is to pull out the most important nuggets, the key insights from this great stack of sources you've given us. We've got Wikipedia, historical stuff, academic bits on social reform, even recent articles on food and
It's a
tourism.
real mix. Yeah.
Basically, this is your shortcut to getting what makes Kerala so distinct. And trust me, there are some serious aha moments coming. This place, its history and present are just unlike anywhere else.
Mm-hmm.
So when you think of Kerala, that phrase God's own country pops up, right? It's a great slogan. But what does it actually mean? Geographically, culturally, what gives it this unique identity?
Well, that nickname, God's Own Country, it isn't just slick marketing, you know.
Mhm.
It really does capture Kerala's incredible natural beauty and its distinct geography.
Right.
It's down on India's Malabar coast in the south. And it's this narrow strip of land, like 560 kilometers long, but only about 70 kilometers wide.
That's really narrow.
It is.
Yeah.
But it packs in this amazing range of landscapes. You've got towering peaks like Anamudi that's 2,695 meters, the highest point in the whole South Indian Peninsula.
Wow.
But then, and this is kind of amazing, you go down to Kuttanad, they call it the Rice Bowl of Kerala.
Yeah.
It's India's lowest point,
Okay.
and it's one of the very few places in the whole world where they actually farm below sea level,
Mm-hmm.
like almost 3 meters below.
Farming below sea level, that's astonishing. Within such a thin strip of land, too. And obviously the backwaters, they're just iconic, aren't they?
Oh, absolutely. The backwaters are, totally defining this huge network of interconnected canals, lakes, estuaries, rivers, all brackish water.
Mm-hmm.
Vembanad is the big one, India's longest lake, about 200 square kilometers. It's the heart of it all. Actually, something like 8% of all of India's waterways are right there in Kerala.
8% in that small state.
Yeah, yeah. And beyond the water, you've got this lush tropical green everywhere, beautiful beaches, mountains, waterfalls, wildlife sanctuaries, like Periyar Tiger Reserve,
Yeah.
the elephants roaming around. It's a huge draw for tourism, obviously. Shapes how people see it.
But here's where it gets really interesting for me. Beneath that stunning geography, there's this incredibly rich culture and a level of diversity that feels, well, surprising. Sets it apart from a lot of India.
It really does. Kerala is one of India's most religiously diverse states.
Mhm.
You've got large populations of Hindus. That's about 54.7%, according to the 2011 census. Then Muslims at 26.6% and Christians at 18.4%.
Significant numbers for all three.
Right. But what's really remarkable isn't just the numbers, it's the peaceful coexistence. It's quite unique. There's this great example at Palayam Junction in Thiruvananthapuram. You see a Juma Masjid Mosque, a Ganesh Temple, and St. Joseph's Cathedral, all standing side by side.
Wow, that's a powerful image.
It is. And it's worth noting, Kerala actually has the largest Christian population in all of India.
So it's more than just different groups living near each other. It sounds like they've actually forged a kind of shared Keralite identity that cuts across these lines.
Exactly. That's a great way to put it. Malayalam is the main language, the official language. And this distinct Keralite identity really started to form way back in the medieval Kulasakara period, partly through differentiating itself linguistically from Tamil culture.
Interesting.
And you see this shared identity beautifully during Onam. It's a harvest festival, technically has Hindu mythological roots, but pretty much all Keralites celebrate it. Doesn't matter what religion they are, or even if they're atheists.
So it's become a cultural thing, not just religious.
Precisely. It's embraced as cultural heritage. It really speaks to a kind of communal harmony.
Okay, this cultural backdrop, it raises a big question for me. How did this unique mixed diversity, this ancient history of interacting with the world, how did that set the stage for Kerala's really unique social and political path, the one that kind of sets it apart from the rest of India?
Well, it's a story that goes way, way back. I mean, some of the very first human migrations out of Africa, maybe 70,000 years ago, they actually settled right there on the Kerala coast.
Seriously, that early?
Yeah. And you can still find descendants like the Kalar tribe who have DNA markers linking them back.
Yeah.
So there's this incredibly deep, continuous human presence and that ancient history. It made Kerala a major trading hub early on.
Right.
In the Middle Ages, you had routine trade with Arabs, Africans, the Roman Empire, even the Greeks. And for centuries, one spice dominated everything: black pepper.
The king of spices.
Exactly. Wars were fought over it. Traders came from everywhere for it. This tiny peppercorn basically put Kerala on the global map for centuries.
Incredible. And it wasn't just about stuff coming in. There was a strong local craft culture too, right?
Oh, absolutely. Take boat building. There's this long tradition of building these large wooden ships called uris. Yeah. Built mainly by the Mopulas. They're Malayalay Muslims, descendants of those early Muslim traders from way back like the 8th century. These boats are amazing, made of teak, huge, and built entirely by hand, passed down father to son, no written plans.
No blueprints, just knowledge passed down.
Just knowledge passed down. And these things last 40, 50 years. It shows this deep-rooted local skill. And, of course, this long history of global interaction continued right up to people like Vasco da Gama landing in Calicut, which, signaled the start of European colonial ambitions there.
It's fascinating, though. A place so connected to the world, you might expect a more fluid society. But Kerala developed this incredibly rigid caste system, didn't it? And maybe, kind of paradoxically, that rigidity is what fueled its unique social reform movement.
That's exactly the contradiction. You have
Yeah.
Swami Vivekananda visiting in the 1850s and famously calling Kerala a lunatic asylum because the caste discrimination was just so severe, so pervasive.
A lunatic asylum. Strong words.
Very. But what made it a bit different, maybe from other parts of India, was who bore the brunt of the enforcement and who the anger was directed towards. Often, among the untouchable castes, their frustration wasn't just aimed at the Brahmins at the very top, but more frequently at the Nairs.
The Nairs. Who were they exactly?
They were the traditional soldiers, landowners, sort of the gentry. Often, they actually outnumbered the Brahmins in many areas and were the ones directly enforcing the rules, the hierarchy on the ground.
Ah, okay. So the struggle against caste took a different strategic focus there.
Yeah, it often meant directly challenging the Nairs, the immediate enforcers.
So who were some of the first people to actually stand up and challenge this system?
Well, a lot of the early resistance was very local, very direct.
Hmm.
A really powerful example is the Chanar Revolt. It's also called the Breastcloth Movement.
Right, I read about that.
Yeah, it started in the 1810s, went on all the way to the 1850s. Basically, Christian Nadar women fighting for the right just to wear clothing covering their upper bodies. A basic dignity denied to them based on caste.
Incredible. Just for the right to wear a blouse.
Exactly. And it culminated in this landmark proclamation in Travancore in 1859, finally granting that right universally to all of Varna women. That's the term for the outcast or untouchable community.
A huge step. Were there key individuals leading the charge even earlier?
Oh, yes. Figures like Vaikunda Swamakal, he was active from the early 1830s. He preached against caste, set up these unique shrines called Nizhal Thankals, where caste rules were explicitly forbidden. And then there was Aratapuza Velayuda Panikkar.
Okay.
He was an Azava, that's another lower caste group, and a martial arts master, lived 1825 to 74. He supported the breastcloth movement, but he also did things like defy temple bans by just walking in dressed as a Brahmin. And he set up schools for Azavas in the 1870s, really pushing education as a way up.
So strong internal pushback. But what about external factors? Were there other things happening that maybe helped catalyze this change?
Absolutely. External forces were really significant. Christian missionaries, for one, especially groups like the London Missionary Society, the LMS, and the Church Missionary Society, the CMS. They were active from the early 19th century.
And they attracted lower castes?
Yes, they drew in many from untouchable groups like the Azavas, Palayas, Naidars. They offer this appealing egalitarian ideology, equality in the eyes of God. But crucially, they also offered access to education through their mission schools
Ah, education again.
and connections to the government. The missionaries had influence, and they used it to pressure the local princely states, Travancore and Khotan, to make concessions. Travancore even started giving grants to missionary schools from 1875.
So missionaries were a key external pressure point. What else?
State actions and economic shifts were huge. Things like land reforms, the Jenmi-Kudian Act of 1867 in Travancore is an example, and abolishing state monopolies on things like pepper and tobacco in the 1860s.
How did that help?
Well, it attracted foreign investment, expanded the plantation economy, tea, rubber, coffee. This created a huge demand for labor. And uniquely in Kerala, this allowed a new middle class to actually start emerging from within the untouchable castes, particularly the Azavas.
That is different. Usually that was an upper caste thing elsewhere.
Mostly, yeah.
Yeah.
In many other parts of South India, the new middle class was primarily upper caste. But here, economic changes opened doors for Azavas. And this also tied into the decline of the old matrilineal system, Maro Makathayam, among groups like the Nairs. As their system changed and land got sold, Guess who bought it?
Christians and Azavas?
Christians and the newly prosperous Izavas, yep, further boosting their economic standing and shifting the social power dynamics.
Okay, what's truly fascinating here for me is how these often localized acts of defiance, these individual efforts, somehow coalesced into organized movements, coming from the bottom up, really shaping Kerala's unique social landscape in a way that just stands out.
Yes, that renaissance from below is really the defining characteristic. The Izava movement was absolutely pivotal in this. Think of Dr. Palpu.
Okay, tell me about him.
He was an Izava leader, also a medical officer. From 1885 onwards, he just relentlessly campaigned for Izavas to be allowed into government jobs, into public spaces. He used everything petitions, like the big Malayali Memorial in 1891, published articles like Treatment of Thiyas and Travancore. He even went and met Swami Vivekananda to get support.
Persistent.
Incredibly. But his persistence also showed him something important. Petitions alone weren't going to cut it. They needed deeper systemic change.
So who provided that, the sort of ideological, maybe spiritual force behind a bigger movement?
That would really be Sri Narayana Guru. He became the spiritual heart of the Izava movement. His philosophy was incredibly influential, summed up in that famous motto, one caste, one religion, one God for all humanity.
Powerful. Simple.
Very. He argued for equality, told people to ditch outdated, costly customs, pushed for modern education, for industry. But he did it all while staying deeply rooted in Hindu philosophy, specifically Advaita, the idea of oneness, which gave his message of unity a real spiritual weight.
And he had some unique practices too, right? Like with temples.
Yeah, he introduced this reformed practice called Narayana Dharma. In some temples he consecrated, instead of traditional idols, he installed mirrors.
Mirrors.
Mirrors were sometimes just plaques with inscriptions about unity. The idea was to make people look inward, reflect on the divine within themselves, challenging traditional idol worship and promoting a more egalitarian, introspective faith.
Wow. How did that philosophy translate into organized action, though, on the ground?
Through the Sri Narayana Dharma Paripurana Yogam, the SNDP, it was formed in 1903 by Izava intellectuals, middle-class professionals. This became the main engine for Izava social reform.
The SNDP.
Its first general secretary was Kumaran Asan, who was also a famous poet. His poems often captured the struggles of untouchables, gave them a powerful voice. And the SNDP wasn't just about talking, they acted. They promoted education, set up businesses like the Travancore Weaving and Trading Company in 1906, the Calicut Bank around 1910.
So economic empowerment was key.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And they fought for civil rights. They successfully pushed, for example, to get temple management separated from state revenue collection in 1922, a big step in reform.
Were there others pushing the boundaries even further, maybe more radically?
Oh, definitely. Sahodaran Ayappan, another Izava leader. He founded the Sahadara Sangam, the Brotherhood Association, in 1917. He's famous for organizing an intercaste feast.
Just having different castes eat together.
Yeah, which was a huge taboo back then, caused a massive backlash, of course. But it was a powerful statement. And it did lead to more interdining, even more intercaste marriages starting to happen. Later, Ayappan actually moved towards rationalism, even atheism, founding the Rationalist Society in 1935, pushing for intellectual freedom, too.
Okay, the Azavas were clearly a major force. What about other groups? Like the Pulayas, you mentioned they were historically at the very bottom. Did they have their own movements?
Absolutely. The Pulaya movement, led by the incredible figure Ayankali, was just as important, and maybe even more militant in some ways.
Ayankali.
Yeah. The Pulayas were historically treated as slaves, the lowest of the low. Ayankali fought fiercely for them. He even formed a kind of defense group, Ayankalapada, basically Ayankali's army. Through direct action, sometimes violent clashes, he fought for the basic right for Pulayas just to walk on public roads, which they finally won around 1900.
Just the right to use a road.
Just the right to use a road.
Yeah.
In 1907, he formed the Sadhu Jana Paripurana Sangam, the SJPS, model on the SNDP. He campaigned relentlessly for education for Pulaya kids, even started his own school for them in 1904 because they were barred elsewhere.
Wow. He sounds determined.
He was. And his most famous action was probably the 1907 agricultural labor strike, first big strike of its kind in Kerala. It lasted a whole year.
A year-long strike.
Yeah, and it worked. They won the right for Pulaya children to enter schools, travel rights, wage increases, a massive victory. He also led this symbolic act in 1915, getting Pulaya women to publicly break the glass bead necklaces they were forced to wear as a sign of servitude. Really powerful defiance. And these actions in Travancore inspired Pulayas in Cochin too.
Okay, this brings up a crucial question. You have all these powerful, specific regional social movements fighting caste oppression. How did they connect with the bigger picture? The nationalist struggle for independence. And how did they eventually shape the political landscape of modern Kerala, especially its turn towards the left?
That connection, that convergence, is absolutely key to understanding Kerala's unique path. The Vaikom Satyagraha from 1924 to 25 is a perfect example.
Okay.
So the Indian National Congress had started passing resolutions against untouchability. The Kerala branch formed committees, and they got support from existing groups like the SNDP, even the Nair Service Society, which represented the Nairs. They decided to target the Shiva temple at Vaikom.
Why Vaikom specifically?
It was prestigious, well-known, and the rules there were incredibly strict. Untouchables were barred from using any of the 4 roads leading to the temple. But crucially, Christians and Muslims were allowed on those roads.
So it highlighted the absurdity and injustice of caste-based exclusion.
Exactly. It became this potent symbol of discrimination that everyone could grasp.
So how did the protest unfold? What made it significant?
It started with volunteers trying to walk the roads and getting arrested. Notably, the first group included a Pulaya, an Azava, and a Nair, deliberately showing cross-caste solidarity. Then the police changed tactics, just blockading the roads to wear people down. That's when Periyar, the famous Tamil anti-caste leader, came and took charge, got jailed twice for it. The big turning point was Mahatma Gandhi's visit in March 1925.
Gandhi got involved directly.
He did. He came, he negotiated with the Orthodox temple authorities and the Travancore government. The final deal was a compromise. 3 of the 4 roads were open to everyone, and they built a new connecting road for the Avarnas, the lower castes, to use. One small section near the temple remained closed off to them.
A partial victory, then.
A partial victory, yes. The Satyagraha officially ended in November 1925, but its real impact was long-term. It really energized the movement and laid the groundwork for the big temple entry proclamation across Travancore in 1936, which opened most temples.
So the temple entry fight continued after Vaikom.
Oh, yes. The Guruvayur Satyagraha followed soon after, 1931-32, led by K. Kalappan, focused on the famous Guruvayur temple. This one saw even more police repression, and radical acts like Krishna Pillai, a future communist leader, actually sneaking in and ringing the temple bells, something only Brahmins were supposed to do.
Wow, direct defiance.
Big time. And women volunteers were really prominent in leading Guruvayur too. It just kept the pressure on for broader temple entry reform.
Okay, so beyond access to religious spaces, these movements also started demanding political power, right? That led to the abstention movement. What was that?
Right. The abstention movement, roughly 1932 to 35, this was about political representation. Azavas, Christians, Muslims, realized they were massively underrepresented in the Travancore legislature and government jobs. It was totally dominated by Nairs.
So they decided to act collectively.
Exactly. They formed an alliance called the Joint Political Conference, or JPC, in late 1932. They demanded things like separate electorates or reserved seats and universal adult suffrage, basically, the right for everyone to vote. And they successfully organized a boycott of the elections.
A political boycott. Did it work?
It showed their collective strength. But they faced serious opposition from the Dewan of Travancore, Sir C.P. Ramaswamy Iyer. He was pretty autocratic, banned their meetings, tried to break the boycott. It highlighted the resistance from the state to sharing power.
Okay, connecting these dots, you can really see how these intense local struggles, fighting caste, fighting for representation, maybe even some disappointment with how the National Congress leadership handled things, how all that created really fertile ground for new political ideas. Especially, it seems, the left.
That's the crucial turn. Many activists, even within the Congress Party, felt Gandhi's methods had limitations, that civil disobedience wasn't enough. They started looking for alternatives. This led to the formation of the Congress Socialist Party, or CSP, within the Congress structure.
Socialists within the Congress.
Yeah, and they were smart. They strategically reframed the issue. They started talking about caste inequality as fundamentally economic class struggle. Their slogan was basically, there are only 2 castes, 2 religions, 2 classes, the haves and the have-nots.
Simplifying the message for broader appeal.
Exactly. And it worked. They successfully mobilized peasant unions, especially in the Malabar region, challenging old feudal dues, chipping away at that ingrained deference to upper castes. They spread their ideas through reading rooms, pamphlets, newspapers like Prampatham.
So it wasn't just talk. They were organizing on the ground, getting more militant.
Definitely more militant. They formed and trained these Red Volunteer Squads. They had direct confrontations with police, with local courts. In some places, the peasant unions basically set up their own parallel administrative structures.
Wow. And were similar things happening with workers in Travancore?
Yes, but somewhat independently at first. You had trade unions emerging in the 1920s, like the Travancore Labor Association, the TLA, mostly made up of Ezevacor workers. They fought for typical workers' rights, better wages, shorter hours, ending physical abuse by foremen.
Gendered labor issues.
Right. But they were also deeply involved in the social reform stuff. The TLA actually sent 50 volunteers to support the Vaikom Satyagraha. They saw the fight for workers' rights and the fight against caste as intertwined.
That connection is key. And all this energy, this organizing, it led to some major confrontations in Travancore, right? Setting the stage for big political changes.
It really did. The TLA eventually joined forces with the Travancore State Congress, which was pushing for responsible government against the autocratic Dewan, Sir C.P. Ramaswamy Iyer. This alliance led to this iconic moment, the Great Palace March in October 1938.
The Great Palace March. Tell me about that.
A massive demonstration led by a woman named Akama Cherian. Estimates vary, but somewhere between 20,000 and maybe even 100,000 people marched on the palace. They confronted an army captain, demanded the release of political prisoners, and they won.
Huge numbers. A real show of popular power.
Absolutely. It was the biggest political demonstration Kerala had seen up to that point. A real awakening.
And this whole trajectory, these struggles, ultimately paved the way for the Communist Party to come to power in Kerala, didn't it? Which is pretty remarkable.
Indeed. Several things boosted the communists. The Puna Pravayalar uprising in 1946 was one. A violent clash in Travancore between communist-led workers and the state army. It happened during terrible famine conditions. Maybe 20,000 workers died during WWII. And in the uprising itself, somewhere between 1,000 and 2,000 communist activists were killed.
A brutal crackdown.
Extremely. But it cemented the Communist Party's image as martyrs, as fighters for the working class. Then there was the Palayam Satyagraha in 1947-48, right after independence. An anti-untouchability fight in Cochin, where, again, Varna caste groups and the communists were very active together.
Solidifying their credentials.
Right. And then came 1957, the historic election. Kerala became one of the first places in the world to democratically elect a communist government. San Marino in Europe was earlier, 1945, but this was huge.
Led by EMS Namboodiripad.
That's right, EMS.
Yeah.
And that government brought in massive reforms, free school education for all, major land reforms. These really broke the back of the old feudal system and the caste discrimination tied to it.
Transformative stuff.
Absolutely. And significantly, that first communist cabinet had many members from those lower Avarna castes. And later, figures like C. Kesavan and R. Shankar, both Zavavas, actually became chief ministers. It showed how far those social movements had come, reshaping the political landscape entirely.
Okay, so after tracing that incredible history, the social change, the political evolution, what does Kerala look like today? How does it continue to stand out, building on that unique past?
Well, modern Kerala's economy is mostly driven by services. About 63% of its revenue comes from sectors like tourism, Ayurveda, and medical services, pilgrimage, IT, transport, education.
Services are dominant.
Yeah, but industry is still significant. Cochin Shipyard, the oil refinery, software, coastal minerals.
Yeah.
And agriculture is still important too. Remember that black pepper history, plus natural rubber, coconut, tea, coffee, spices. That ancient legacy continues.
And I've heard so much about the remittance economy. How big a factor is that?
Oh, it's absolutely fundamental. Money sent home by Keralites working abroad, especially in the Gulf countries, but also the West is a massive source of income.
Changes everything.
It's had a profound impact. Boosted prosperity, obviously. But importantly, it's also helped level the playing field socially, bridging some of those old class and caste divides by creating new ways to build wealth and gain status.
Interesting. And that outward-looking nature connects to tourism too, right? God's own country is a global brand now.
It really is. Millions of tourists come every year. Ayurvedic tourism, wellness travel has exploded since the 90s. Ecotourism is big too. Kerala gets all sorts of accolades. National Geographic Traveler called it one of the 50 must-see destinations of a lifetime. Time magazine put it on their World's Greatest Places list in 2022.
Impressive. Where do most tourists go?
Kochi usually tops the list for both international and domestic visitors.
And it seems Kerala is also becoming known as a food destination now. That spice history must play a part.
Definitely. It's a growing scene. Younger Indians especially were exploring its unique cuisine, the organic food movement there. And chefs are doing cool things, taking traditional dishes like dosas or putus.
Putus, what are those?
Steamed rice cakes, usually cylindrical. Delicious. Anyway, they're taking these classics and giving them modern twists, like dosas filled with duck masala, or putus flavored like Spanish paella, even made into ice cream sundaes.
Wow, okay, fusion put two.
Yeah, but the core is still there. Those amazing spices, especially pepper, you hear about specific varieties like tribal pepper or Tellichoy peppercorns. That heritage is alive and well in the food.
So, beyond the economy and the food, Kerala consistently scores incredibly high on social development metrics. That history of reform must be directly linked to these modern achievements.
It's perhaps the most striking outcome, and yes, absolutely linked. Kerala has this stunningly high literacy rate, 96.2% back in 2018. They had a huge head start, a first-mover advantage. Even at India's independence, Kerala's literacy was around 50%, while the national average was only 12%.
50% literacy in 1947, that changes everything.
It really does. It impacts political awareness, economic opportunities, everything. Creates a different kind of civil society. Kerala also ranks second in India on the Human Development Index, HDI, as of 2023. It's the least impoverished state. Rural poverty plummeted from nearly 60% in the 70s down to 12% by the late 2000s.
Remarkable progress. And healthcare.
Pioneering. Universal healthcare access, very low infant mortality, like 6 per 1,000 live births. It's even been called the best place to die in India because of its excellent palliative care systems. It shows this deep commitment to well-being, start to finish.
And governance.
Strong rankings there, too. First fully digital state in India back in 2016. Ranked least corrupt state in 2019, best governed state in 2020. These aren't just stats. They reflect how that legacy of social justice struggles really translated into tangible benefits for people's lives.
Those are truly amazing achievements, a consistent long-term story. But, no place is perfect. Even with all this success, Kerala must face ongoing challenges.
That's certainly true. Yes, despite the successes, Kerala does grapple with issues. Unemployment is relatively high, and it disproportionately affects educated women, which is a specific challenge. Being so globally connected through migration, remittances, tourism brings its own vulnerabilities too. Managing those flows, economic shifts, and, like many places, it has a very fragile environment that needs careful stewardship alongside development and climate change pressures.
Right. Complexity remains. So bringing it all together,
No.
what's the main takeaway for someone listening, someone curious about how societies evolve? What does Kerala's incredible journey really tell us?
I think Kerala's distinctiveness is just a really powerful story. It's this remarkable blend, this synthesis of ancient traditions and global connections with really radical modernity, driven by those bottom-up social movements. And that unique political evolution has created a society that, despite challenges, consistently performs incredibly well on human development. It really shows how that persistent internal struggle for equality, combined with an openness to the world, can forge a truly unique path.
So maybe a final thought for everyone listening. In a world that often feels fractured by difference, maybe overwhelmed by information, think about Kerala. Think about how its history of openness, combined with those relentless internal fights for fairness across caste, across class, somehow built a society where diverse beliefs don't just coexist, they seem to actively contribute to a shared identity. It raises a big question for all of us, doesn't it? What can we learn from Kerala's spirit? That ability to blend tradition and modernity, that persistent push for equity, even when it means challenging the oldest, deepest norms.